I'm starting off with a piece of walnut that's just over 6 feet long. I'm just measuring it out here and marking it off to cut it down later. It doesn't really matter how wide it is. I think that's about 8 inches wide, because we're just going to chop it down on a table saw and use each edge for our pieces, for our sides of our ladder light, as I'm calling it. Now here all I'm doing is just cutting on my lines I marked, getting the piece chopped down to 6 feet, and then I'm going to chop it in half again and make it 2 3-foot sections, so that way I can get 4 sides of my light. Now I'm going to set my height of my table saw blade to 5/8 of an inch. That's the thickness of the material that I'm going to use to make the slats for the ladder light out of. And now I'm transferring that same measurement over to both sides of my 3-foot sections of walnut. That way I know where to set my fence, because we're going to be cutting a little L shape out, and that's what we're going to do next here. And you can do this with a dado blade, but not a lot of people have a dado blade, so I just did mine with a table saw. And what I did is I just ran it through one pass, made the depth of where it was going to be, and then I just moved the fence away from the blade to cut slowly out towards the edge. And we're only going 5/8 of an inch, so it's not really that time consuming to do it this way. Now that I've got my little L grooves cut out, I missed some stuff, so I just have a little cleanup here to do. I just took a chisel and knocked off the little pieces that stuck between, and then took a little plane that I have and just cleaned up the edge to get it all flush and make sure that it was all square and 90 degrees there. Now that we have those angles cleaned up, I am setting my fence to be the width of the thickness of the board. That way I have a perfect square with an L cut out of it. So if you had 3/4 of an inch stock, you would set your fence so it hacks off 3/4 of an inch at the end of it. I'm using like inch thick stock here, so, and I'm just going through and doing this and knocking these off and making the legs. Now we need to cut a piece to make the top out of the cap that sits on the top of the light. So I just set the fence again the same way, like 3/4, hack off a square piece. And what I want to do is I want the interior dimension, so the smallest part of a 45, like that. I want it to be 6 inches long, because I want my slats to be 6 inches long. So then this will sit on the top with an overhang of whatever it's going to be. It doesn't need to be I know that the interior needs to be 6, and if it overhangs, it overhangs. So now I'm just going through and I'm making a square and using the pieces to reference off each other. So I only had to measure once. I go through and then I'm just checking them to make sure they're all the same size. Now that we have all our pieces cut, you can see here more what I'm talking about, the interior dimension. It's the inside of the square. We need it to be 6 inches. And I'm just gluing these up and then using a band clamp I have to secure them all together. And then once that's done, just measure corner to corner. And if your measurements are the same, corner to corner, you know your piece is in square. And mine works out to be in square, shockingly. Alright, now we're going to cut the ladders for the thing. This is where the 5/8 inch comes in, because this wood I'm using is 5/8. This is some stock that I had from a friend of mine, and I think it's plywood that's had the top layer planed off. I don't know, it's weird, but it's got this cool like grain pattern, so I thought it would be cool to use for the slats. I set my fence at 3/4 of an inch, because I knew I wanted that's how big the slats to be, and I chopped them on the chop saw down to 6 inches. I lost that video footage. Sorry. But now I'm just doing a dry fitting just to see how many looks good in comparison to it, and I decided on 20 was a really good round number. Here I am squaring this piece up to the edge, and so it's at 90 degrees. And then I'm going to do that for both of them, for both pieces, so that way I know they are parallel across the thing, because if you do them with a little bit of an angle on them, then your whole thing's going to be awkward, not good. So that's how you make sure they're parallel. You just set up your square and on both sides and clamp it down. And then I'm just taking the nail gun and tacking these in place and using some scrap pieces as a spacer. That way everything stays consistent. Here I'm just doing a dry fitting of my slats, and I built another one of those off camera because you didn't see me do it again. And I'm just checking it to see how they go together, and I'm getting some ideas about how I can attach these other two sides. And what I found out was the best way to do it was to use the tension to hold it together and just use a little bit of glue, which you'll see next. So as you can see here, I'm just using the tension that the slats hold on the other slats to keep it in place, with a little bit of glue on the end to hold it in. And it seemed to work out really good. Just had to make sure that it wasn't bowing apart, so you can see me slap it a little bit to knock it together, and just worked my way from the top down. So now we need to come up with a way to mount the lighting kit on the inside of the light. I used a piece of scrap plywood I had laying around, and my measurement between my slats inside was just over 5.25 inches to get it really nice and snug. And I just drilled a 1/2 inch hole in the top of it to countersink this piece in, and then a 1/4 inch hole all the way through to run the cord up through. And then I just secured it down, and this is all stuff you can buy at the Home Depot. It's just typical light, like build your own light kit, and then you can just kind of mash these pieces together. It's real easy, and it comes with instructions on the kit of all the hole sizes you need to be able to run everything through. And now you see I'm just leveling that up and squaring it up, and then just tacking it in with a nail gun, just 2 nails through the slats, and you don't even see it. Now I should have done this first, before I tacked it in. I should have run the wire up through the base of the kit, because this was a pain in the butt. But I eventually got it. So if you're going to do one, run your wire first. Now I got it through. I turned it around, and I'm going to pull the cord all the way out of the light so I can actually install the switch mechanism. Now this is really easy. The cord you get from the store is already stripped, and all you have to do is just Phillips head, screw them in. Doesn't matter which side they go on, because that's the way electricity works. And then you run it back through, and it just tension fits into the base. It's got like little dimples in there, and it just locks in there. And I made sure to get one with a pull chain. Otherwise, if it had like a knob, it would be almost impossible to turn it on. But they also come with ones that have like the switch on the cord. That would work too. But I went with the pull chain. Now just a little bit of glue and a couple nails, and we secure the top on. Now the reason we made that 6 inches, and we knew that the slats were going to be 6 inches, is because now I can make sure this thing is square on there by looking at the corners and measuring and lining them up with the corners of the top slat. And with that, square, and now we're pretty much done. This is just the unfinished, unsealed, unsanded version, but you can see what it looks like. I'm not going to show you sanding and finishing, because that's all pretty easy, but I will explain it once you see the final product. So here we go. This is it. It's all done. For finishing, all I did was I sanded it down to 120, and then I used some Bullseye spray shellac and gave it a good spray all around, really bring out the tones in the walnut and really darken up the slats. And that's it. It's all plugged in and ready to go. So that was my video on how to make the ladder lights. I hope you enjoyed them. It was part of a Instructables contest to remix someone else's design. The original one of these was 6 feet tall, kind of like a room light. I wanted some bedside lamps, so I made these in its style. So if you have any questions, just leave a comment below. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, give it a share, give it a subscribe if you really like it. And other than that, you totally just used movie magic and only made one of these and just cloned it, didn't you? Yeah, pretty much. Thanks for watching.